This is my second pro-Trump speech. Things I failed to say in the first one I think are important. I'm trying to rally people for, the Bernie Sanders supporters, the Bernie or Bust people, trying to rally them to vote for Trump and everybody else that watches this. But a lot of them are up in the air still, so I've been focusing on them. But one thing, Trump made a statement, which I forgot to mention in the first one. They said he had made a statement several years ago, long before he was running for president, where he said he thought very often liberals were better with the economy than conservatives. And I've often heard that liberals tend to be better at history and English, and conservatives tend to be better at math and science. And I don't know if there's any truth to this or not, but I do think very often the liberals understand the dynamic of the political system and the economic system, how they work together, where conservatives don't understand it. Conservatives tend to be short-sighted, narrow-minded, and they're good with business in the short term. But they don't understand the whole big picture, and they don't understand the long term. On the other hand, I will say, I don't want to sound biased on the side of liberals, but I will say that I think conservatives very often are better with foreign policy. And especially if you look back in the 60s, where you had the advancement of communism, the proliferation of communism everywhere. Conservatives were far better at containing communism than liberals were. I mean, look at, especially with JFK, and pretty much everything he did was a failure, including the Caribbean Basin issue, several other things. But that's another issue. But I don't want to sound biased. But I do think Trump, there's truth in this, and I think that makes Trump a better president, the fact that he's open-minded enough to recognize this. I also want to say that my dad used to say a long time ago that he thought wealthy people ought to be president, and because they don't have as many conflicts of interest. And you can say this with Trump, he has a lot of money, and he's more independent for that reason. He doesn't depend completely on campaign money. Even if he takes a little bit, he still doesn't depend on it the way Hillary does. So Trump is the one to vote for. And Bill Maher made a point, which I think sort of says except I thought Bill Maher was awfully sarcastic towards the conservative party. But he had a speech on there where he talked about how California had taxed the rich and had 4% growth. Well, if they have 4% growth, I actually wonder if the rich wouldn't end up having more in the long run. You know, if there's 4% growth, there's more money in the state. But I don't know what they did. I assume they taxed the rich and then dropped taxes like sales tax and, state taxes on businesses and small businesses, stuff like that. I don't know what but somehow they could develop 4% growth, so they increased consumer confidence, probably, in some way. But I don't know. And I think that if Trump made this statement, and you can tell that Bill Maher's right, and if Trump made this statement, he'll probably try to do the same thing with the federal government. And so you'll have, double economic growth in California, theoretically. And if Trump and he seems more apt to do this than Hillary. The other thing I was going to say, I think basically you take entrepreneurs, and it seems like the best entrepreneurs tend to be in the middle. They tend to be a little conservative, a little liberal. I mean, you have some businesses, it's too far to the left, like Braniff International, for example. They did a whole lot of expansion at the wrong time and ended up going bankrupt. When the airline industry wasn't doing very well, they expanded too fast. Of course, that's too liberal. That doesn't work. But you have people on the right that don't expand enough, and they used to talk about the acorn and the forest, and the acorn and the tree, and it's like a conservative, like an entrepreneur. If he's conservative, he's going to see an acorn, or he's going to see a tree. But a liberal is going to see a forest. But you can see this evident in a lot of people that made a lot of money. They tend to be moderates. They tend to be independents. I mean, like Ross Perot, several $billions. I don't know how much he made. He was a billionaire. And he was a moderate. And you have Warren Buffett, who's often commented that the AMA is a leech on the general economy, a tapeworm, and eventually going to destroy it. So apparently he was a little bit moderate too. And Trump's the same thing. He made all this money himself. So I think that in itself, if he's done as much entrepreneuring as he had, and he's made a lot more money than Hillary ever made. I know that. And I know he's made a lot more than Mitch McConnell ever made. And he probably knows more about making money for the country, but he's still going to have to deal with the corruption in government, which has to do with Mitch McConnell, who is in bed with the campaign money and the hard right. But how's he going to deal with this? Well, you've got to figure out that one thing, he's a multimillionaire, so it means the people trust him, and that's going to put pressure on Mitch McConnell. And these people on the hard right, they're in bed with corporate America. And most of them are in the Republican Party. And if he leads the Republican Party, he has a better strategic chance of getting rid of the corruption and getting rid of the trade deals than Hillary does as a Democrat, because the Democrats, most of them, are already against the corruption. A lot more of them. Most of the ones that are in bed with corruption are in the Republican Party. And if he leads the Republican Party, there's always pressure on the parties to go with the leader. And plus the fact that he's got, the people's support. Where Hillary, if she gets in there, the Republicans are going to block everything she does. So she has a strategic position, and Bernie Sanders would have had too, that's really terrible. But anyway, there's reasons I think the Republican Party might move over to him. And one thing, he looks presidential. That's the first thing. You think, what does looks have to do with it? Well, Republicans, especially the hard right, tend to be dogmatic. They think the president's God. Well, who seems more godlike? Hillary or Trump? Well, that sounds sexist, but here you got to figure that the people he's trying to influence are probably sexist, and they tend to be dogmatic, and they can't separate religion and politics. And if there's someone in there that looks like God, it's just like with a prosecuting lawyer. I mean, who tends to be better prosecutors, men or women? Actually, men do. And there's reasons, because the jury is psyched out. They see a man in there, they think he's God, and they listen. He has the voice of God. He has a lower voice. Everything about him. They're taller, they're bigger, they're stronger, and they have a voice that sounds like God. And if you got a dogmatic jury, that affects them. And Marcia Clark or whatever, was she the best prosecutor we ever had? I don't think she was. And so Trump is going to be better for all these reasons too. Trying to change the Republican Party, he's going to have a better strategic advantage for all these things. I also think the public's going to respect the fact that he's made a lot of money too. And so when he says we need to build our infrastructure, I think the public's going to listen to him. Because on first impulse you think, well, that's inefficient. But then you think, wait, he made several $1 million or $1 billion or whatever he made. He may know that works. And I think people have faith in him where they would in Hillary. And let's see, the other thing. Oh, another thing, the fact that he's moderate, and he made that statement about the Democrats, liberals sometimes being better at the economy. You notice in the 60s we had a higher standard of living and a better economy, and Richard Nixon was part of the reason for that. And he was moderate, and he taxed the rich. He taxed the wealthy. That's one thing he did. He was a Republican. But like I say, he was a smart Republican. He was a lot smarter than the ones we've had lately. And Trump and the moderate ones seem to be smarter, and they seem to be better at handling the economy. And I think Trump will be better for this reason. He's going to be more the way Nixon was. Not with the criminal stuff. Nixon had criminal stuff. The criminal stuff had nothing to do with what he did with the country. Actually, the criminal stuff did very little damage to the country. As soon as Nixon left, it was gone. But Nixon, as a president, did a lot of good for the country. He's never gotten credit for it. And really his criminal stuff didn't carry over into what he did for the country with, taxing the rich and opening trade with China and stopping the Vietnam War and a lot of other things, other than the fact that he ready to stop it right before the election, which he should have stopped it earlier. Other than that, he pretty much did everything right as president. He's one of the best presidents we've had, and he's never gotten credit for it. And but he was more moderate, and Trump seems someone that's more moderate the way Richard Nixon was, and the way Barry Goldwater was, and the way Ike Eisenhower was. A very good president too. So for all these reasons, I think Trump is far better than Hillary. And Hillary has three problems that make you think that she's not good and is in bed with corporate America. And one has to do with the speech, I've said it before, but the speech to the Goldman Sachs, and the fact that she's taken a lot more campaign money than Trump, and the fact that she argued for the AMA, and she said that Bernie Sanders' figures don't work when he was talking about guaranteeing health care for everyone. He said, well, the figures don't work, but she didn't bring out the fact that the corruption is why the prices are unrealistic, and the campaign finance corruption is why they are. And if you stop the corruption, the prices would go down. The reason she failed to bring this out is because she's in bed with the campaign money and the corporate corruption, and she didn't want to say it. And Sanders should have called her on that. and that's where Sanders goofed. But anyway, and that's another reason why she appears to be in bed with the 1%. And also, she reduced wages in Haiti when she was Secretary of State, according to Jill Stein and several other sources, from 60 cents to 40 cents an hour. Well, if she did that, she doesn't care about families or anything else. All she cares about is corporate America and their profits and the campaign money she got from them. So all four of those things is good reason not to vote for her. And the things I listed earlier are more reasons to vote for Trump. And I think that's everything I left off of the first speech as far as I know.